founders don't do a great job of like really thinking deeply about the implications of fundraising. One of the things that I think people also don't think enough about is like raising from Andreessen can be good or bad depending on who's the person who drives that investment, right? Because there are some people who it's like, hey, that's probably not the best partner. Like and a lot of times we have these conversations with folks. We're like, hey, I'm talking to so-and-so at big firm XYZ. And we're like, hey, we've heard some not great things about that particular partner. But then they might say, hey, I'm talking to so-and-so at big firm XYZ. We'll say, oh, they're great. Like they're super sharp. They're awesome. And they can go to bat for you internally at such a big firm. Like that's important. But if you're getting like either like a very junior person or like a person that has kind of a not great reputation or whatever, there is a fundamental difference. But you could look at Andreessen and say, this is a good partner. This is a bad partner. This is a, lukewarm partner, whatever. But the reality is like, okay, that's a question of like, how do I like this person? What do I think of them? How do they reference? But then when you raise money from any of those people, from Andreessen or from General Catalyst or whatever, there is still implications inherent in raising from that firm, regardless of the partner, that would not be true raising from a different type of firm.
So you get the power dynamic. Can they throw around their weight? Can they get you in the room with the right people? Can they knock down barriers from like maybe a political or governance standpoint for you? Then you have the element of like the partner themselves. How do you get along with them? I do think there's this other box too, which you've touched on before. Like I'll give an example. Like one of the benefits of taking money from Insight, say you're a cybersecurity company, they have 450 portfolio companies that you can hawk your wares into or something like that. What are some of the other benefits that founders or CFOs when they're raising money should like stack rank in terms of like what does taking money from this firm get me?
I think that every firm is different and every company is different. And I think that like when you are a first-time founder who's never hired anybody in your life, the ability to be able to tap into like a talent network, to be able to like get a good benchmark for what good looks like and stuff like that, to get some support and help as you try and grow a team, that can be valuable. If you're like a third-time founder and you're going to hire a lot of the people that have come with you to your previous companies, that's way less valuable, right? So I think that like there's not enough conversation around the variability of different founders working in different spaces will benefit from different things. Another good example is like there are a number of companies that are they're selling into government increasingly, right? As we see more like defense, aerospace, industrial type companies, they have a lot more government work than the traditional SaaS company might have, right? And so there are some firms that have gotten built, I would say like either it's because they have a lot of experience investing in those categories, or it's because they have very deliberately built their experience to cater to those people. So a good example of like, they've just kind of gleaned it over the years of building these companies is like Founders Fund is a great firm to raise from if you're selling into defense and government. But then you also have folks like Construct Capital in DC. And if I remember correctly, it's one of the founders of the firm was like Uber's general counsel for years and years. And so like she's navigated a bunch of very complex, government regulation type of questions. And so Construct is a great firm if you want to have access to that type of expertise and stuff. So different people get built up around different things. And so it just depends on what you as a founder feel like is most important, most valuable to you. That's also one of the benefits of like you raise multiple rounds is like you're kind of putting together an investor base where it's like, I get this from so-and-so and I need that early on, but then over time, I'm going to need more of this. And then later in my later rounds, I'm going to need folks that can just like, I'm going to need to raise a lot of capital. That's why you see a lot of folks who will raise from firms like a Wellington or a T. Rowe Price or whatever. And it's like, because those are like massive asset managers who can like write pretty sizable checks. And if you're going to raise a lot of capital, like those are good folks to have on your cap table because they can throw capital around probably even quicker than like an Andreessen could.
And they can double down if you IPO.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.